The lawyer looked at Hannah and said, "Your father left you Stillwater Lodge." Hannah stared at him. Instead, Earl Carter had left his only daughter an old lakefront lodge in upstate New York that had been closed for nearly 12 years. "That's everything?" she asked. The lawyer nodded. "Everything mentioned in the will. Everyone in the family called the property worthless." 3 days after the funeral, Hannah drove north through heavy rain. Stillwater Lake appeared between the hills. At the water's edge stood the lodge. The roof was damaged and several windows were boarded up. A faded sign still read, "Stillwater Lodge." Hannah stepped out of her car. Her younger brother, Marcus, was waiting beside a black SUV. "You actually came," he said. "Dad left it to me." Marcus laughed. "Dad left you a money pit." He handed her a folder. "I'll give you $50,000 for it. Sign it over today." Hannah frowned. "You said it was worthless." Marcus's smile faded. "I'm trying to help you." Another vehicle arrived. A sharply dressed man stepped out. "Ms. Carter?" "Richard Hayes. I represent Northlake Development. We'd like to purchase this property." Hannah shook her head. "I'm not selling. Northlake already owns most of the shoreline." Hannah asked, "Then why do you need this lodge?" Richard paused. "Without this parcel, our entire project is incomplete." Hannah entered the lodge alone. Old photographs lined the dusty walls. One showed Earl standing beside a younger man near the lake. Behind the frame, she found a small brass key taped to the wall. A folded note was attached. It was in Earl's handwriting, "Hannah, if you're reading this, they finally know about the lodge." She turned it over. The second line was worse, "Whatever happens, do not trust Marcus." Suddenly, a floorboard creaked upstairs. Hannah froze. She grabbed the fireplace poker and climbed the stairs. A bedroom door stood slightly open. She pushed it. Empty. But an envelope lay on the bed. Her name was written across it. Inside was the same photograph she had found downstairs. On the back, Earl had written, "The truth about Stillwater begins with Hollis." Hannah whispered, "Who is Hollis?" Outside, a car engine started. She rushed to the window. Marcus was driving away. Hannah looked at the photograph again. Her father hadn't left her the lodge because it was worthless. He had left it to her because someone was desperate to take it, ***. The next morning, Hannah woke before sunrise to rain tapping against the lodge windows. She had barely slept. Her father's warning kept circling through her mind, "Do not trust Marcus." She placed the photograph and brass key on the kitchen table and studied the man standing beside Earl. At 8:10, Marcus walked into the lodge without knocking. "You scared me last night," he said. Hannah watched him carefully. "Where did you go?" Marcus hesitated. "I had business nearby." "At midnight?" He ignored the question and looked around. "Did you find anything?" Hannah pretended not to understand. "Find what?" Marcus smiled nervously. "Dad left a lot of old junk here. I'm trying to help you." Then his eyes landed on the photograph. For 1 second, his expression changed. Hannah noticed. "You know him." Marcus picked it up. "That's Hollis." "Who was he?" Marcus put it down. "Nobody important." Before Marcus could leave, Richard Hayes arrived. "Ms. Carter, we need your decision." Hannah shook her head. "I'm not selling." Richard opened a map across the table. Most parcels around Stillwater Lake were highlighted. Only Hannah's property remained unmarked. "Northlake has agreements with the other owners," he explained. "Your lodge is the final parcel needed for the project. So my father was the last obstacle." Richard's smile tightened. "Your father refused every offer we made." After Richard left, Hannah tried the brass key on an old cabinet beneath the staircase. The lock clicked. Inside were notebooks, property records, and the first notebook belonged to Hollis. Earl and Hollis had purchased the land together decades earlier. The final entry read, "Earl, if they come for still water, don't fight them with money. Show them the original agreement." Then Hannah noticed a strange carving beneath the desk, a small lake surrounded by 3 lines. She pressed it. A hidden panel opened in the floor. Inside was a metal box wrapped in plastic. Her hands trembled as she opened it. There was an old legal agreement. At the bottom was Hollis's signature. Hannah read the first paragraph and froze. The document stated that Stillwater Lodge could never be sold to a commercial developer without approval from Hollis's surviving family. But Hollis was dead. So who was his surviving family? Hannah turned the final page. A single name was listed. She recognized it immediately. It belonged to someone she had trusted her entire life. Hannah whispered, "No." Then footsteps sounded outside. Someone was approaching the lodge. And this time, Hannah knew exactly who it was. The footsteps stopped outside the lodge. Hannah quickly folded the legal agreement and slipped it inside her jacket. She had barely closed the hidden compartment when the front door opened. Marcus walked in. "What are you doing here?" Hannah asked. He glanced toward the staircase. "I wanted to make sure you're okay." His eyes moved toward the dusty cabinet. "Did you find anything?" Hannah replied, "Just some old papers." Marcus stepped closer. "Dad kept things hidden. Be careful about what you open." Hannah felt a chill. "Why?" He shrugged. "Some things are better left buried." Hannah decided to test him. "Marcus, who was Hollis?" His expression changed. "Where did you hear that name?" "Dad left it for me." Marcus looked away. Hollis was Dad's old business partner. They had a falling out. Over what? Money, he answered too quickly. His phone rang. Marcus walked outside. Hannah quietly followed. From behind the door, she heard him say, "She found the agreement." A pause. "I don't know how much she knows." His voice became tense. "You need to give me more time." Hannah stepped back before he returned. When Marcus came inside, he acted normal. "I have to go." Hannah nodded. After his car disappeared, she called her father's old attorney, Daniel Brooks. "Daniel, I need to ask you about Hollis." There was silence. "Where did you find that name?" Hannah explained everything. Daniel's voice became serious. "Do not tell Marcus about the document." Hannah asked, "Why?" Daniel replied, "Your father made me promise never to discuss Hollis unless you discovered the original agreement yourself." Hannah sat down. What was Dad protecting? Daniel answered, "More than a lodge. Hollis and your father once owned the entire western shoreline of Stillwater Lake." Hannah looked outside. "Northlake wants all of it." "Exactly," Daniel said. "Your father's refusal made powerful people angry." Hannah asked, "Who was Hollis's family?" Daniel hesitated. "His daughter was Evelyn Reed." Hannah froze. "Evelyn? The woman who handled Dad's lodge accounts?" "Yes." Hannah whispered, "But she died 2 years ago." Daniel was silent. Then he said, "That's what everyone was told." Hannah stood. "What are you saying?" Daniel replied, "Your father spent the last year trying to find Evelyn. He believed she was alive." Before Hannah could ask another question, a loud crash came from upstairs. She grabbed the fireplace poker and rushed toward the hallway. A bedroom door was open. Drawers had been pulled out, papers were scattered, and the mattress had been lifted. Someone had searched the room. Then Hannah noticed a muddy boot print beneath the bed. It was fresh. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number had sent one message. You should have listened to your father. Leave still water tonight. Hannah stared at the message. Then a floorboard creaked behind her. Hannah spun around, gripping the fireplace poker with both hands. A shadow moved at the end of the hallway. Who's there? She shouted. No answer. She stepped forward slowly. The hallway window suddenly slammed shut from the wind, making her jump. Then she noticed the back door was open. Whoever had searched the room had already escaped. Hannah ran outside, but the muddy driveway was empty. Only tire tracks disappeared into the woods. She called Daniel immediately. Someone broke into the lodge. His voice became serious. Did they take anything? Hannah looked at the scattered papers. I don't think so. Daniel paused. Then they were probably looking for something specific. Hannah thought about the hidden agreement. They know about Hollis. Daniel said, then you need to leave. Hannah refused. My father left this to me. I'm not running. She spent the next hour checking every room. Behind an old bookshelf, she discovered another hidden compartment. Inside was a small cassette recorder and a handwritten label, for Hannah, only after you find the agreement. Her hands trembled as she pressed play. Earl's voice filled the dusty room. Hannah, if you're hearing this, then someone has already tried to frighten you. Don't trust anyone who tells you still water is worthless. Your brother may come to you first. He will tell you I made mistakes. He will tell you the lodge is drowning in debt. Don't believe him. Hannah closed her eyes. Earl continued, the real danger isn't Marcus. He's only following someone else's instructions. The recording stopped. Hannah stared at the machine. Then it clicked again. Earl's voice returned. There's one person I trusted until the day I died. Her name is Evelyn Reed. If she is alive, find her before Northlake does. She knows why Hollis disappeared from the original property records. Hannah immediately called Daniel. You said Evelyn was alive. Did Dad know where she was? Daniel hesitated. He believed she was hiding somewhere in Vermont. Hannah asked, why would she hide? Daniel answered, because after Hollis died, she accused Northlake's predecessor of threatening her family. Then she disappeared. Hannah looked toward the lake. And Dad spent his final year looking for her. Yes. That night, Hannah couldn't sleep. Around midnight, she heard a car pull onto the property. She looked through the curtains and saw Marcus step out. He wasn't alone. A second man stood beside him. Hannah recognized him immediately. It was Richard Hayes, the Northlake representative. She quietly took out her phone and began recording. Marcus whispered, she found the agreement. Richard replied, then we have a problem. Marcus asked, what do we do? Richard looked toward the lodge. We give her what she wants. Marcus frowned. What? Richard smiled. Evelyn. Hannah's heart stopped. Then Richard added, tomorrow, we'll make sure Hannah believes Evelyn is coming to help her. Hannah stayed completely still until Marcus and Richard drove away. She saved the recording in 3 different places before calling Daniel. They know I found the agreement, she said. And they're planning to bring Evelyn here. Daniel was silent for a moment. Then don't let them know you heard the conversation. Hannah looked toward the dark lake. Why would they use Evelyn? Daniel answered, because if Evelyn is really Hollis's heir, her signature could be used to make the Northlake deal look legitimate. Hannah frowned. But the original agreement says the heir has to approve the sale. Exactly. They don't need to convince you if they can convince everyone else that Evelyn supports the deal. Hannah realized what Richard meant. They weren't bringing Evelyn to help her. They were planning to use her. The following morning, Hannah received a call from an unknown woman. "Are you Hannah Carter?" "Yes. My name is Evelyn." Hannah's heart jumped. "Evelyn Reed?" The woman hesitated. "Your father told you about me." Hannah looked toward the window. "Where are you?" "About 30 minutes from still water." Hannah almost asked her to come immediately, but remembered the conversation she had recorded. "Why are you coming?" Evelyn replied, "Because your father asked me to protect the lodge." Hannah asked, "Did Richard Hayes contact you?" There was a long silence. "Yes." Hannah knew then that Richard had already reached her. "What did he offer you?" Evelyn answered quietly, "A lot of money." Hannah's voice became firm. "And what did you tell him?" Evelyn said, "I told him I needed time." The call ended. An hour later, a gray sedan arrived. Evelyn stepped out. She was in her early 60s, with silver hair and a nervous expression. Hannah opened the door. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Evelyn looked around the lodge and whispered, "Your father kept everything exactly the way it was." Hannah asked, "Why did he spend his last year looking for you?" Evelyn looked at the lake. "Because I knew the truth about Hollis." She entered the lodge and placed an old envelope on the table. "Hollis didn't simply leave this property. He was forced out." Hannah opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph of Hollis arguing with a much younger Richard Hayes. Hannah stared at it. "Richard?" Evelyn nodded. "His father founded the company that became Northlake Development. They wanted this shoreline decades ago." Evelyn explained that Hollis refused to sell because he knew the land contained something valuable beneath it, an underground spring that supplied clean water to several nearby communities. Hannah looked confused. "A spring?" Evelyn nodded. "And your father discovered that Northlake planned to control it." Before Hannah could ask more, headlights appeared outside. Evelyn looked through the window and immediately stepped back. "They found me." 2 black SUVs stopped in front of the lodge. Richard stepped out. But he wasn't alone. Evelyn's words left the room silent. "Hollis is still here?" Hannah whispered. Evelyn nodded slowly. "Not in the lodge. Beneath it." Richard suddenly laughed. "She's lying." But his voice sounded nervous. Daniel looked at Evelyn. "Tell us everything." Evelyn glanced at Marcus, then at Hannah. "Your father and Hollis discovered the underground spring almost 40 years ago. They built Stillwater Lodge above it and created a legal trust protecting the land. When Northlake's founder discovered the spring, he offered them millions to sell. Hollis refused. A few months later, Hollis disappeared." Hannah looked at Richard. "Your company did this?" Richard shook his head. "My father had nothing to do with it." Evelyn answered, "Your father didn't personally take Hollis. But he knew what happened." Richard stepped forward angrily. "Enough." One investigator blocked him. "Stay where you are." Evelyn continued. "Hollis wasn't killed. He was forced into hiding after someone threatened his family. Earl helped him disappear because they believed Northlake would keep coming." Hannah felt tears in her eyes. "Why didn't Dad ever tell me?" Evelyn looked at her. "Because he wanted you to have a normal life. He thought the secret would die with him." Daniel asked, "Then why return now?" Evelyn reached into her coat and pulled out an old key. "Because Earl contacted me 2 weeks before he died. He told me someone had discovered the original trust and was preparing to steal the property." Hannah stared at the key. "What does it open?" Evelyn replied, "The old pump room beneath the lodge." Richard suddenly became pale. Hannah noticed. "You know what's down there." Richard said nothing. Marcus looked at him. "Richard, what is she talking about?" Richard finally admitted, the spring. Daniel immediately called the county attorney. If there's a protected water source beneath the property, Northlake cannot develop the land without environmental approval. Richard shook his head. You don't understand. The spring isn't the important part. Hannah looked at him. Then what is? Richard stared at the floor. The documents. Evelyn nodded. Exactly. She explained that Hollis had hidden the original ownership records and evidence of Northlake's decades-old attempts to acquire the shoreline inside the pump room. Whoever controlled those documents could expose the entire scheme. Hannah looked at the key. Then we're going down there. Daniel warned her, we don't know if it's safe. Hannah replied, my father left this for me. I'm not walking away now. They moved toward the basement. Marcus followed. At the bottom of the stairs, they found an old iron door covered in rust. The key fit. Hannah turned it. Click. The door opened. Cold air rushed past them. A narrow stone tunnel disappeared beneath the lodge. They entered slowly. At the end of the tunnel was a small underground chamber. And sitting beside an old wooden table was an elderly man with white hair. Hannah could barely move. The elderly man slowly stood from the wooden chair. His face was older, but there was no doubt. It was the same man from the photograph. Hollis, she whispered. He nodded. Your father told me you would eventually come. Hannah stepped closer. My father said you were dead. Hollis gave a sad smile. Earl wanted the world to believe that. It was the only way to keep me alive. Marcus stared at him in disbelief. Then why didn't you ever come back? Hollis looked at him. Because someone inside your family was giving Northlake information. Marcus immediately looked toward Richard. It wasn't me, Richard said. Hollis shook his head. I didn't say it was. He walked toward an old metal cabinet and opened it. Inside were dozens of files, photographs, and property records. Earl and I documented everything. Every threat. Every illegal offer. Every attempt to take this land. Hannah picked up a photograph. It showed Northlake's founder meeting with a much younger Victor Hayes. Victor? She asked. Hollis nodded. Richard's father wasn't the only person involved. Richard stepped forward. My father died 15 years ago. I had nothing to do with this. Hollis looked at him. I know. But someone used his old network. Daniel examined the files. This could prove Northlake's entire development plan was based on fraudulent claims. Hollis nodded. That's why they need Hannah to sell. Once she signs, they can argue that the original trust was abandoned. Hannah looked at Marcus. And you knew? Marcus shook his head quickly. I knew Richard wanted the property. I didn't know about all this. Hollis stared at him. You knew enough to lie to your sister. Marcus lowered his head. I was desperate. Hannah's voice became cold. You were greedy. Suddenly, the lights went out. Everyone froze. A metallic door slammed somewhere in the tunnel. Daniel turned on his flashlight. Nobody move. Then they heard footsteps. Someone was running toward the exit. Hannah shouted, "Stop!" She and Marcus rushed after the sound. When they reached the basement, the back door was open. Richard was gone. On the ground was a folder. Hannah picked it up. Inside were photographs of Marcus meeting Richard over the past 6 months. Marcus stared at them. I can explain. Hannah looked at him. You said you barely knew him. Marcus had no answer. Daniel opened the final page. It contained a bank transfer showing Marcus had received $250,000 from a Northlake account. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. You sold me out. Marcus whispered, I didn't know how to stop. Hannah shook her head. You could have told me. Before Marcus could respond, Hollis called from the tunnel. Hannah. She turned. Hollis was holding another document. His face had gone pale. This isn't about the lodge anymore. What do you mean? He handed her the paper. At the bottom was Earl's signature. And beneath it was a sentence that made Hannah's heart stop. Hannah kept staring at the sentence on her father's document. If they discover the spring, they will come after my daughter next. Hannah whispered, Dad knew this was coming. Hollis nodded. He wanted you to choose what to do with what we built. Marcus stepped forward. I didn't know about the threats. Hannah turned toward him. But you took their money. Marcus lowered his head. Yes. Richard promised me money to start over. Hannah stared at him. And you were willing to sell Dad's last gift to me? Marcus looked ashamed. I thought it was just an old lodge. Hollis interrupted, that's exactly what they wanted everyone to believe. Daniel's phone rang. The county received an emergency petition from Northlake. They claim the lodge is unsafe and want an immediate inspection. Hollis understood. They're trying to get access to this chamber. Hollis opened a cabinet and removed a metal box. Inside was an old videotape and a letter from Earl. She opened the letter. Earl had written, Hannah, if Northlake comes for still water, show them this recording. Never give them the original. They rushed upstairs and played the tape. Earl appeared on the screen. Hannah, if you're watching this, then the people I feared have finally come for still water. The spring isn't valuable because of the water. It is valuable because of what Hollis and I discovered beneath it. Earl continued, 40 years ago, we found evidence that Northlake's predecessor had been illegally dumping chemical waste into the underground water system. We documented everything, names, payments, locations, and environmental reports. Then Earl said, the reports are not in the lodge. The screen went black. Hannah whispered, then where are they? Hollis looked toward the lake. Your father hid them somewhere Northlake would never search. Before Hannah could ask another question, headlights appeared outside. A convoy of black SUVs stopped near the lodge. Richard stepped out with lawyers and county officials. Daniel looked through the window. They're here. Hannah asked, can they take the property? Not if we reach the evidence first, Hollis replied. Hannah looked at the old photograph of Earl and Hollis. Behind them was a small wooden dock. Beneath the dock was the same three-line symbol carved into the lodge floor. Her eyes widened. The evidence isn't under the lodge. She grabbed a flashlight. It's under the lake. Hannah grabbed the flashlight and ran toward the dock. Hollis followed closely behind while Daniel stayed back to distract the county officials. The rain had started again, turning the wooden board slippery. Hannah looked at the three-line symbol carved into one of the dock posts. It matched the symbol from the hidden compartment. Dad put it here, she whispered. Hollis nodded. Earl always said the safest place was where nobody wanted to look. Hannah noticed a loose board near the end of the dock. Beneath it was a rusted metal ring. She pulled it, revealing a narrow ladder disappearing into the dark water. Hollis stopped her. I should go first. Hannah shook her head. My father left this for me. She climbed down. Hollis followed. At the bottom was a small underwater passage leading toward the shoreline. Hannah could barely breathe as they moved through it. Finally, they reached a dry stone chamber hidden beneath the lake. A metal box sat on a shelf. Hannah opened it. Inside were original environmental reports, photographs, payment records, and handwritten statements from former workers. But one folder immediately caught her attention. It was marked Northlake, 1987. She opened it and froze. The documents proved that Northlake's founder had known about the chemical dumping for decades. Worse, the records showed that the company had paid officials to keep the contamination secret. Hollis looked at the papers. Your father spent years protecting these. Hannah turned another page. There was a list of names. One name was circled in red. Richard Hayes. Hannah stared at Hollis. Richard knew. He knew everything, Hollis said. His father told him before he died. Suddenly, a loud metallic sound echoed through the chamber. Someone had entered the tunnel. Hollis whispered, "We have to go." Hannah grabbed the documents and put them inside her waterproof bag. They climbed back toward the dock, but when Hannah reached the top, Richard was waiting. He stood with 2 security guards. "Give me the bag," he said. Hannah held it tightly. "No." Richard's expression hardened. "You don't understand what you're holding." "I understand perfectly." Richard stepped closer. "If those documents become public, hundreds of people could lose their jobs. Investors will panic. The entire company could collapse." Hannah stared at him. "You're worried about the company?" Richard replied, "I'm trying to protect what my family built." Hannah shook her head. "No. You're protecting what your family stole." Richard reached for the bag. Hollis stepped between them. "You won't touch her." Richard suddenly smiled. "Then perhaps you should ask Hannah what happens when the truth comes out." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. It was Marcus. He was being taken into a police car. Richard said quietly, "Your brother has already been arrested." Hannah's heart sank. Then Richard added, "And he's blaming you for everything." Hannah stared at Richard's phone. Marcus was being placed into a police car. "What did you do?" she demanded. Richard smiled. "I did nothing. Your brother signed documents, accepted Northlake money, and helped obtain confidential property records. Now he's telling investigators you planned the entire thing." Hollis whispered, "He's trying to scare you." Hannah looked at Richard. "You think I'll destroy the evidence to save Marcus?" Richard stepped closer. "Give me that bag, and I can make his problems disappear." For a moment, Hannah said nothing. Then she smiled. "You still don't understand my father." Richard frowned. Hannah held up her phone. Daniel was still connected on a live call. Everything Richard had just said had been recorded. Within minutes, county investigators reached the dock. Richard tried to leave, but Daniel blocked him. Hannah handed the waterproof bag directly to the county attorney. "These are the original environmental reports." Richard's face went pale. The documents exposed decades of concealed contamination, illegal payments, forged property claims, and Northlake's attempt to acquire still water before the evidence could surface. Marcus was released after investigators confirmed Richard had exaggerated his role, but he still faced consequences for accepting the $250,000 payment. Hannah refused to rescue him. "I'll tell the truth," she said. "But I won't erase your choices." Marcus nodded through tears. Dad would have said the same thing. Months later, Northlake's development was permanently stopped. Richard faced fraud and obstruction charges, and a cleanup fund was created for communities affected by the contaminated water. Still Water Lodge remained protected. Hannah could have sold the land for millions. She didn't. With Hollis beside her, she restored the lodge and opened Hollis's house, a workshop and temporary home for people rebuilding their lives after losing jobs, homes, or families. Marcus wasn't given money. Instead, Hannah offered him work repairing the lodge. For the first time in years, he accepted responsibility without asking for an easy way out. On opening day, Hannah found one final letter from Earl beneath the old front desk. It read, "If still water is still standing, then you chose people over profit. That's all I ever wanted you to inherit." Hannah looked across the lake as tears filled her eyes. She had thought her father left her a worthless lodge. He hadn't left her wealth. He had left her a test. And the people who tried to steal still water ultimately revealed its true value. Hollis stood beside her. Your father would be proud. Hannah smiled. No. He'd tell me there's work to do. Then she opened the doors of Hollis's house. And for the first time in decades, Still Water Lodge belonged not to the people who could pay the most, but to the people who needed it most, ***.